The private jet sliced through the night sky, its sleek frame illuminated by the moon's pale glow. Inside, William Grant, a billionaire tycoon known for his ruthless business acumen, sat in the plush leather chair of his jet's cabin. The hum of the engines was a comforting constant as he sipped a glass of rare scotch, his mind preoccupied with the looming merger that would solidify his dominance in the global tech industry. But comfort turned to chaos in an instant. The turbulence hit without warning, a violent jolt that sent the glass tumbling from his hand. Alarm bells blared in the cockpit, and the pilot's urgent voice crackled over the intercom. "Mr. Grant, we've lost engine power. Brace for an emergency landing." William's heart pounded as the jet plummeted. The once luxurious cabin became a scene of terror as he gripped his seat, his mind racing through possibilities. He was not ready to die. Not like this. The ground rushed up to meet them. The last thing he remembered was the deafening roar of impact and then darkness. William's eyes fluttered open to the faint smell of smoke in the eerie stillness of the forest. The wreckage of the jet lay scattered around him, its once sleek body mangled beyond recognition. Dazed and bleeding from a cut on his forehead, he stumbled out of the twisted metal, coughing as he inhaled the acrid fumes. His surroundings were a dense wilderness, the towering trees and underbrush illuminated by the flickering flames of the wreck. He called out hoarsely for the pilot or crew, but the only response was the distant howl of wolves. Fear clawed at him. He was alone, injured, and miles from civilization. The weight of his predicament sank in. For all his wealth and power, he was utterly helpless in the face of nature's indifference. A rustling sound made him freeze. His eyes darted toward the undergrowth, and he braced himself for an attack. But instead of a predator, a figure emerged. It was a young black teenager, no older than 16, wearing a worn leather jacket and carrying a sturdy wooden staff. His eyes were sharp, his posture confident, and he moved with a precision that betrayed years of navigating these unforgiving woods. "You okay, mister?" the boy asked, his voice steady and calm despite the chaos around them. William blinked in disbelief. Who? Who are you?" "Name's Malcolm," the boy replied. "Saw your plane go down. Figured someone might need help." Malcolm wasted no time. He assessed William's injuries with the precision of someone far beyond his years and fashioned a crude bandage for the wound on his head. "We gotta move," he said. "This crash is going to attract attention, and not the good kind." William tried to protest, but Malcolm's tone left no room for argument. Leaning on the boy for support, the billionaire followed as they ventured deeper into the forest. The trek was grueling. Every step seemed to magnify the throbbing pain in William's head. "How do you know these woods so well?" William asked, his voice strained. Malcolm glanced back, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "I grew up around here. My grandma always said the forest takes care of those who respect it. Guess I've learned to respect it." They stopped at a small clearing where Malcolm quickly built a makeshift shelter from fallen branches and leaves. His movements were efficient, his hands steady. William watched in awe. This boy, who had likely never seen a fraction of his wealth, exuded a competence and resilience that put his own to shame. Night fell quickly in the forest, and with it came an oppressive darkness. Malcolm built a small fire, its flickering light a fragile barrier against the unknown threats lurking in the shadows. "We need to keep the fire low," Malcolm warned. "Don't want to draw too much attention." As if on cue, the distant howl of wolves echoed through the trees. William's pulse quickened. You think they'll come here?" Malcolm's expression was unreadable. "Maybe. Wolves usually avoid people. But the smell of blood from the crash, it's hard to say." Hours dragged on, each one heavier with tension than the last. The forest seemed alive with sounds, branches snapping, leaves rustling, and the occasional guttural growl that sent shivers down William's spine. Suddenly Malcolm stiffened. He gestured for William to stay silent and pointed to the darkness beyond the firelight. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at them. Malcolm rose slowly, gripping his staff tightly. The wolf stepped into the light, its fur bristling, teeth bared. William froze, his breath caught in his throat. "Stay behind me," Malcolm said firmly. His voice, though quiet, carried a commanding weight that belied his age. The wolf lunged, but Malcolm was ready. He sidestepped with agility and struck it with the staff, a sharp crack echoing through the night. The animal yelped, but did not retreat. It circled them, its predatory gaze locked on Malcolm. William watched in stunned silence as the boy stood his ground. He fought with a combination of instinct and skill, his movements precise and calculated. Finally, after a tense standoff, the wolf backed away, disappearing into the shadows. Malcolm turned to William, breathing heavily. "We're not safe here. We need to keep moving." With the immediate threat gone, they packed up and continued their journey. Malcolm led the way, his keen senses alert to every sound and movement. William followed, humbled by the boy's bravery and resourcefulness. Over the next few days, their journey through the wilderness became a test of endurance. Malcolm taught William how to find edible plants, purify water, and navigate using the stars. For the first time in his life, William found himself relying on someone else, a boy who had nothing to his name but his courage and knowledge. As they trekked, they began to share pieces of their lives. William spoke of his empire, the deals he'd made, and the sacrifices he'd justified in the name of success. Malcolm listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights that were disarmingly wise for his age. Malcolm, in turn, shared stories of his life in the small, struggling community on the outskirts of the forest. He spoke of his late grandmother, who had taught him everything he knew, and his dreams of one day making a difference for the people he cared about. As they neared the edge of the forest, Malcolm suddenly stopped. He knelt to the ground, his fingers brushing over a faint trail. "We're being followed," he said grimly. William's blood ran cold. "By what?" Malcolm's eyes met his, filled with a seriousness that made William's stomach churn. "Not what? Who?" The realization hit William like a punch. The crash wasn't an accident. Someone had sabotaged his plane, and now they were hunting him down to finish the job. Malcolm's demeanor shifted instantly, his sharp mind assessing the situation. "We need to lose them," he said. "There's a ravine a few miles from here. If we can reach it, we can make it harder for them to track us." William nodded, his trust in the boy's instincts now absolute. They moved swiftly, the forest blurring around them as Malcolm led the way with uncanny precision. Behind them, faint sounds of pursuit grew louder, the crack of branches and the murmur of voices. As they reached the edge of the ravine, Malcolm stopped. "This is it," he said. "We climb down here. It'll slow them down and buy us time." William hesitated, staring at the steep descent. "Are you sure?" Malcolm's gaze was unwavering. "It's our best shot." With Malcolm's guidance, they began the treacherous climb. The loose rocks and uneven surface tested their resolve, but Malcolm's steady encouragement kept William moving. By the time they reached the bottom, their pursuers' voices had faded into the distance. "We're not out of danger yet," Malcolm said, his voice low, "but we've got a chance now." Malcolm's demeanor shifted instantly, his sharp mind assessing the situation. "We need to lose them," he said. "There's a ravine a few miles from here. If we can reach it, we can make it harder for them to track us." William nodded, his trust in the boy's instincts now absolute. They moved swiftly, the forest blurring around them as Malcolm led the way with uncanny precision. Behind them, faint sounds of pursuit grew louder, the crack of branches and the murmur of voices. As they reached the edge of the ravine, Malcolm stopped. "This is it," he said. "We climb down here. It'll slow them down and buy us time." William hesitated, staring at the steep descent. "Are you sure?" Malcolm's gaze was unwavering. "It's our best shot." With Malcolm's guidance, they began the treacherous climb. The loose rocks and uneven surface tested their resolve, but Malcolm's steady encouragement kept William moving. By the time they reached the bottom, their pursuers' voices had faded into the distance. "We're not out of danger yet," Malcolm said, his voice low. "But we've got a chance now." The footsteps grew louder, punctuated by the low murmur of voices. Malcolm's grip on his staff tightened as he signaled for William to stay still. The faint light of flashlights swept through the underbrush, the beams cutting through the darkness like blades. Two men emerged into the clearing, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlight. They were armed, their movements cautious but purposeful. Malcolm's eyes flicked to the hidden pits and the crude spikes he had carefully placed. He gave William a quick nod, his expression a mix of determination and calm. The first man stepped closer, his boot landing squarely on a concealed tripwire. A sharp snap echoed as a branch swung upward, striking him in the chest and sending him sprawling backward with a pained grunt. The second man whirled around, his flashlight beams scattering as he scanned the area. Before he could react further, he stumbled into one of the hidden pits. His shout of surprise cut short as he crashed to the bottom. Malcolm didn't wait. He sprang from the tree trunk, his staff a blur as he struck the first man's weapon from his hand. The man scrambled to his feet, but Malcolm was relentless, his movements precise and unyielding. William watched in stunned silence, his heart racing. The boy's courage and skill were unlike anything he had ever seen. As the second man struggled to climb out of the pit, Malcolm turned to William. "Now, get his flashlight." William hesitated for only a moment before springing into action. He grabbed the fallen flashlight and aimed its beam directly at the second man's face, blinding him temporarily and giving Malcolm the opening he needed to finish subduing the first man. Within moments, both pursuers were disarmed and incapacitated. Malcolm stood over them, his chest heaving as he turned to William. "We have to move. There could be more of them." William nodded, his respect for Malcolm reaching new heights. Together they disappeared into the forest, leaving the fallen men behind as the first rays of dawn painted the sky. As they pushed deeper into the forest, Malcolm and William paused to catch their breath near a dense thicket. The sound of the stream nearby provided some comfort, but Malcolm's sharp eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings. "I think we're clear for now," Malcolm whispered, but his voice carried an edge of uncertainty. "We need to find higher ground. We can get a better view and see if there's a way out of this forest." William nodded, still shaken from the earlier encounter. His once unshakable confidence was giving way to a growing reliance on Malcolm. "Lead the way." As they climbed a steep incline, Malcolm suddenly stopped and crouched low. He motioned for William to do the same. "Something's not right," he murmured. William followed Malcolm's gaze to a clearing below. There, hidden among the underbrush, was a makeshift camp. Several men, armed and equipped with high-tech gear, were gathered around a table strewn with maps and surveillance equipment. "They're tracking us," Malcolm said, his voice barely audible. "They must have drones or GPS equipment. That's how they're keeping up." William's stomach dropped. "Can we destroy their equipment?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Malcolm's eyes narrowed as he considered the question. "It's risky, but if we don't, they'll keep coming. We'd need to create a distraction and take them by surprise." William swallowed hard. He had faced hostile boardrooms and cutthroat negotiations, but this was a different level of danger. "Tell me what to do." Malcolm smiled faintly, a hint of admiration in his expression. "Stay close and follow my lead." The next move would require precision, stealth, and an unyielding determination to outsmart their relentless hunters. The stakes had never been higher. The plan Malcolm outlined was fraught with danger, but it was their only option. "We need to hit them where it hurts," he said, pointing to a vulnerable point in the camp. "That equipment is their lifeline. Take it out, and we cripple their ability to track us." William's jaw tightened. "How do we do that without getting killed?" Malcolm crouched low, scanning the camp through the foliage. "We use the terrain, distractions, stealth, and speed. We don't need to beat them all, just scatter them long enough to destroy the equipment." The camp was situated in a shallow valley surrounded by dense trees, with a stream cutting through one side. The tactical advantage was clear. They could attack from multiple angles, using the noise of the water to mask their movements. "We split up," Malcolm instructed. "I'll set a distraction on the far side. When they move toward it, you go for the table and grab anything you can smash or disable, especially that laptop. They're probably coordinating everything from there." William hesitated. "I'm not exactly trained for this." Malcolm gave him a firm look. "You've closed billion-dollar deals and faced down rooms of sharks. This is just a different kind of battlefield." William nodded, steeling himself. "Let's do it." Malcolm moved first, darting silently through the trees. William marveled at how quickly the boy disappeared into the shadows, his movements precise and deliberate. Moments later, a sudden crackle of fire erupted on the far side of the camp, followed by shouts and frantic movement as the men scrambled to investigate. Taking a deep breath, William crept toward the equipment table. The high-tech gear gleamed under the dim light of a lantern. He spotted the laptop, wires snaking from it to a portable power source. His hands shook as he reached for it, but he forced himself to focus. "Breathe," he whispered, Malcolm's earlier words echoing in his mind. One step at a time, with a grunt, he yanked the laptop free and slammed it against the table edge. The screen shattered, sparks flying from the damaged hardware. He turned to the radio equipment, ripping wires and smashing components with a nearby rock. A shout behind him made his heart stop. He spun around to see one of the men pointing a flashlight his way. "Hey, over here!" Panic surged through him, but before the man could move, Malcolm appeared out of nowhere. He struck with his staff, the force of the blow sending the man sprawling. "Keep going," Malcolm shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. William grabbed the last piece of equipment, a drone controller, and hurled it into the stream. Sparks and smoke rose as it sank beneath the water's surface. The camp was in complete disarray now, with men shouting orders and chasing shadows created by Malcolm's distractions. "Time to go," Malcolm yelled, motioning for William to follow. They ran, their feet pounding against the forest floor. Behind them, the camp was alive with chaos, flashlights sweeping wildly as the men tried to regroup. Malcolm led the way, his knowledge of the terrain their saving grace. "We're not out yet," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "They'll come after us, but we bought ourselves time." William struggled to keep up, his lungs burning and legs aching. "How do you stay so calm?" he gasped. Malcolm shot him a quick smile. "Panic doesn't help anyone. Focus does." They reached a narrow ravine and slid down its steep embankment, landing near a cluster of boulders. Malcolm motioned for William to stay low. "We hold here for now. Let them tire themselves out searching." William collapsed against a rock, his body trembling from the exertion. That was insane. Malcolm chuckled softly, his eyes scanning the dark forest above. "You did good, though. Smashed that laptop like a pro." Despite the tension, William found himself laughing. I guess desperation brings out hidden talents. As the adrenaline began to fade, the two sat in the quiet of the ravine, the sound of the stream their only companion. William looked at Malcolm, the boy's face lit faintly by the moonlight. "You've saved my life more times than I can count," William said. "I don't know how to thank you." Malcolm shrugged. "You don't have to. You just keep moving forward. That's how you thank someone." William hesitated. "You're different from anyone I've ever met. I've spent my whole life around people who only care about themselves, about what they can take. But you risk everything to help someone you don't even know." Malcolm's expression softened. "My grandma used to say, you don't measure a person by what they have, but by what they give. She didn't have much, but she taught me how to be strong, how to do what's right." William nodded, his respect for Malcolm growing deeper. "She must have been an incredible woman." "She was," Malcolm said quietly, "and she'd tell you the same thing she told me. You've got more strength than you think. You just have to use it." For the first time in years, William felt something shift inside him, a sense of purpose that went beyond profit and power. In this boy's courage and wisdom, he saw the kind of person he wanted to become. "We'll make it out of this," William said, his voice firm. "And when we do, I'll make sure the world knows what you're capable of." Malcolm smiled, his eyes glinting with determination. "Let's focus on surviving first." The forest's dense canopy began to thin as Malcolm and William pressed onward. Every step brought them closer to the edge of the wilderness, and hopefully to safety. But their pursuers were relentless. The chaos they had sown at the camp had bought them time, but Malcolm knew it wouldn't last forever. "We need to find a way out before they regroup," Malcolm said, his voice firm. His sharp eyes scanned the terrain, calculating every possibility. William nodded, his own resolve hardening. The events of the past few days had transformed him. He was no longer the passive observer, relying solely on Malcolm's strength. He felt a newfound determination to contribute, to fight for their survival. As they climbed a rocky ridge, Malcolm suddenly stopped, raising his hand to signal William to freeze. "Hear that?" he whispered. William strained to listen. Faintly, over the rustling leaves, came the distant rumble of an engine. His heart sank. "They've got vehicles now?" Malcolm shook his head. "No, this sounds different. It's steady, like a generator." They crept forward, the sound growing louder until they reached the ridge's crest. Below, nestled in a clearing, was a small cabin surrounded by solar panels and a satellite dish. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. "Someone lives here," William said, hope flickering in his voice. Malcolm's expression was cautious. "Could be, or it could be another trap." "We have to check," William insisted. "We need supplies, maybe a phone, anything." Malcolm hesitated before nodding. "Stay behind me. Let me do the talking." As they approached the cabin, the door creaked open, and a wiry man in his 50s stepped out, holding a shotgun. His weathered face was etched with suspicion. "Who are you and what do you want?" he barked. "We're not here to cause trouble," Malcolm said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "We're being hunted. Our plane crashed a few days ago, and we need help." The man's eyes narrowed, studying them. Finally, he lowered the shotgun. "Come inside. But if you're lying, I won't hesitate to throw you out." The cabin was small but well-equipped, with shelves lined with canned goods and a ham radio crackling faintly in the corner. The man introduced himself as Edgar, a former park ranger who had retired to the wilderness for solitude. "You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest," Edgar said as he poured them cups of steaming tea. "I picked up some chatter on the radio. Sounds like they're after you, all right. Any idea why?" William hesitated before nodding. "They sabotaged my plane. I think it's about the merger I was working on. Something big enough to make someone want me dead." Edgar grunted. "Corporate sharks, figures." He turned to Malcolm. "And you, kid? What's your stake in this?" "I just saw the crash and decided to help," Malcolm said simply. Edgar raised an eyebrow. "Brave of you. Not many would stick their necks out like that." Malcolm shrugged. "It's the right thing to do." Edgar offered them a lifeline, his satellite phone. But there was a catch. The signal was weak, and they would need to climb a nearby peak to get a clear connection. "It's dangerous," Edgar warned. "They'll be scouring the area. But if you can make the call, you might be able to get a rescue team in." Malcolm and William exchanged a look. "We'll do it," Malcolm said. Armed with Edgar's guidance and a small map, they set out once more. Every step toward the peak felt like a gamble, the forest around them alive with unseen threats. They could hear the occasional distant shout, their pursuers combing the area. As they neared the summit, William's legs ached, and his breath came in ragged gasps. But he pushed on, driven by Malcolm's unwavering resolve. Finally, they reached the peak. Malcolm quickly assembled the satellite phone, his hands steady despite the tension. William dialed a number he had memorized, his company's emergency line. The line crackled, then connected. "This is William Grant. I need immediate extraction. Coordinates incoming." The response was swift. Within hours, the distant thrum of helicopter blades echoed through the valley. Malcolm and William signaled with a flare Edgar had provided, relief washing over them as the aircraft appeared. As they climbed aboard, William turned to Malcolm. "You saved my life. I won't forget it." Malcolm smiled faintly. "Just promise me something." "Anything," William said. "Use what you have to make a difference, for people like me, for the ones who don't have a voice." William nodded, the weight of Malcolm's words sinking in. "I will. You have my word." Months later, Malcolm sat in awe as he entered the sleek headquarters of Grant Industries. He had received a personal invitation from William himself. The once imposing billionaire greeted him warmly, a changed man. "I've been waiting for this day," William said, leading Malcolm into a grand conference room. "I want you to meet someone." A group of executives stood, smiling at Malcolm. At the head of the table was a plaque, Malcolm Foundation for Opportunity and Resilience. "This is for you," William said, "a foundation in your name. Its mission is to help underprivileged kids get the resources and opportunities they need to thrive." Malcolm's eyes widened. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me run it," William said with a grin. I need someone with your strength and heart to lead the way. Malcolm's smile softened as he looked at William. You know, I didn't help you because I expected something in return. Where I come from, people like me, people with my skin color, are often judged before we're known. But I've always believed that living with kindness and love is how you make a real difference. It's how you show the world that those judgments are wrong. William's expression turned serious, the weight of Malcolm's words settling over him. I wanted to help because you needed help, Malcolm continued. Because when someone's in trouble, you step up. And yeah, life can be unfair sometimes. But I've always believed the world has its way of rewarding those who live right. Not always when you expect it, but it happens. William nodded, his respect for Malcolm growing even deeper. And you've proved that 100 times over. The world needs more people like you. Malcolm chuckled. Maybe the world just needs more people willing to see each other for who they really are. William extended his hand, his voice steady. Then let's make that world together, starting here. Malcolm shook his hand, their bond now unbreakable. Let's do it. And so a boy from the forest and a billionaire from the boardroom joined forces, turning a chance encounter into a legacy that would change countless lives. Their bond, forged in the wild, became the foundation of a modern fairy tale, a testament to courage, compassion, and the belief that goodness always finds its reward. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please support me by clicking the logo in the bottom right corner to subscribe to my channel. This way you won't miss any of the exciting stories coming up. Thank you so much.